from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can communicate with me directly by putting your question or comment on whatever platform you're watching on, and it will appear in my chat room, which you can see on one side of my screen, and we can have a lovely conversation. I quite enjoy being able to talk directly in this format. At some point in the future, perhaps it will be more of a video conversation. Right now, it's written, but it's still a direct conversation. Whereas, for example, when I was doing my vlogs, people would make comments after seeing the vlog, but I would not see them until later. So this allows me to respond directly to people's comments or questions. I hope everyone is having a lovely day today, the start of a new week. Tomorrow, I believe, is the new moon. We have Mercury retrograde about to start later this week, and chances are I'm going to talk about some of those subjects later in the week, but not today. Today I was going to talk about Psychic 101. And hello to Lynn in the chat room. It's good to see you, Lynn. I have been, for some time now, teaching the Psychic 101 class at Psychic Academy. And as I was thinking, what do I talk about today? The thought occurred to me that maybe some of the things that are part of that class might be relevant for and of interest for people to talk about. I'm not going to review the class as such, but rather some of the basics of psychic reading, some of the things that you really ought to know if you're thinking of doing psychic work for yourself or for others. And I think the first and most important thing to know, and at the risk of repeating myself because I say it often, is that this is a perfectly natural thing. It's not supernatural. It's not really removed from everyday experience, because the truth is we're psychically connected every moment that we're alive. Now, some of us work to shut that down or distance ourselves from it more than others do, but even then, it's still there. It's a natural part of living. When we study the psychic arts, when we learn to interact psychically intentionally, what we're doing is we're taking command of something that we do unconsciously all the time. And everybody has had psychic experiences of one kind or another, whether it's getting a, quote, hunch, end quote, getting a feeling about a person or a place that later turned out to be instructive to them. We've all had occasions, whether we're consciously psychic or not, when we had psychic experiences. When we study it, when we learn it, these become far more something we're conscious of. I don't know that I'll say they're more frequent. I say that we're more conscious of it, and we know what to do with it. Although it's a normal part of our everyday life, we don't normally, if we don't have a background, if we don't have any training in it, necessarily know what to do with it, how to react to it, how to grow it. And hello to Kazan. And seeing Kazan reminds me that I seem to have lost my closed captions, which I normally have, and I'm not quite sure where the control for that is. But I'm trying to turn it back on. And I hope you're having a good day, Kazan. The next thing that I think I would say is you also want to remember. Oh, and Kazan says that they can see the closed captions right now. I guess it got fixed for me. Yay! I'm very happy to know that. I was very concerned about the loss of them. It must have. I'm not quite sure what had happened, but there was at least one day when we seemed to have lost them, and I'm glad to see them back because it's very important. One of the things I've always believed very strongly in is accessibility for everyone, and I will admit there are times that we've been more able to be accessible than others. We've always done our best to be as accessible as we can. And I certainly hope to continue that. And hello to Donna in the chat room. Greetings from Lake Superior, the inland sea. Greetings, Donna. Um, it is it's wonderful to see so many people from so many places. And I love it when you say hello, and I particularly love when I see new names and new people. It tells me we're growing and continuing to thrive. And of course, I also love seeing all the people that I already know and love. So, in addition to psychism being a natural thing, the next thing I would say is that hello to Monica in the chat room. Um, it is also extraordinarily important to take care of your energetic system. Normally, we call this psychic hygiene. At least in my background, we call it psychic hygiene. Keeping your energy clear, keeping your energy grounded, not allowing yourself to carry forward other people's energy that you may pick up on. In everyday life, everyone puts out a certain amount of energy. Hello to Vanessa in the chat room. It's good to see you, Vanessa. And they take in a certain amount of energy, and that energy always carries a charge from its origin. We do it unconsciously. We can learn to do it consciously, and we can also learn to shield from it consciously. But it's a natural part of life also. And one of the things that can happen if we're not practicing psychic hygiene is we can pick up a lot of energy from other people or from other places that will clog up our own energetic system and need to be cleansed away. That is psychic hygiene. That's part of psychic hygiene. So anytime I teach anything about psychism, or about magic for that matter, and I will restate something I've said many times, that as I understand these words, psychism and magic really are the same things, except that one is passively receiving the higher powers of the soul, for want of a better way to put it. The other is actively using them. And hello to Eve in the chat room. It's good to see you, Eve. And of course, the difference between these things is largely arbitrary when we come down to it. So whether talking about psychism or magic, the place I will start is by telling you it's perfectly natural and that you must practice good psychic hygiene. I've often talked about how when I worked with the D&H psychic fairs in central Illinois 40 years ago now, a long time ago, but many of the psychics there, certainly not all of them, but some of them um, were very ungrounded because they didn't know psychic hygiene. It wasn't part of their particular background. If I had needed any stronger message for why psychic hygiene was important and why it needed to be taught, seeing people who were habitually ungrounded because they never got rid of all the extra energy they were bringing in psychic work really underscored that message to me. And some of them seem to be barely in this world. They were the most extreme examples, and most of the people working at D&H were not having this problem. But there were enough of them to make an impression. And I know that psychic hygiene is not equally emphasized in every metaphysical discipline, but I think it's an absolute essential to any kind of psychic or magical work. I think it's necessary to constantly be cleansing, refreshing, clearing your energy, grounding your energy, shielding from unwanted energy. I think it's a terrible mistake not to do that. And how much of it is too much? I don't know that it can be too much. I would say it's too much if it feels too much to you, but it can very easily be too little. And keeping yourself well shielded, well cleansed, vitally, vitally important. Next thing that I think I would say that is vital in doing psychic work, at least if you're particularly if you're wanting to make a profession of it, but even as an interest, is to learn everything you can. And hello to Amethyst in the chat room. It's good to see you, Amethyst. Um, I think that psychic skills are endlessly fascinating, and I have made it a habit to learn as many as I can. When I created the second degree lessons, I included every major form of divination, for example, that I could think of. Certainly not every form of divination, but the major ones, because I thought other people would be equally interested. And for the most part, they were. To me, it was a subject of infinite curiosity, and I loved and still love learning new systems for divination and equally new ideas about magic. I think that the worst mistake you can ever make is to think you know everything and that there's nothing further for you to learn, because you will never reach that place. Because even if by some miracle you knew everything there was to know, tomorrow someone's going to invent something new. You must constantly continue learning, constantly continue growing. And I think that this really is a basic idea in psychic or magical work, that no matter how much you learn, there will always be more, and that this is not a difficulty, but um, a reward, a constant incentive to keep going. And, I found that every time I found myself getting bored with one way of doing things, Spirit would present me with a new one. And I certainly am not the only person with that point of view. When I was working in the psychic fairs, I knew many other psychics who had all kinds of different skills they used. Probably no one more than Rosemary Fletcher. I often mention Rosemary, um, and I'd have to say she was one of the best psychics I have known. And I also often mention Robin Lochurko. I mention there are lots of people I often mention, but both Rosemary and Robin had endless ways of reading. Um, and Robin notably said that you could read from literally anything, and she was absolutely right. And chances are she knew exactly how to do it, no matter what it was. And I find it fascinating to look at all these different ways of pursuing the psychic arts. Pardon me. It is, to me, it's a fascinating and endless journey. And that's life also. And I think that when we look at life is meant to be an endless adventure. But sometimes we come to the point that we're burned out, we're tired, maybe we're bored, maybe we think there's nothing further for us. But I think that that is merely because we've stopped looking. I think if we continue looking, we'll always find more. There will always be more to learn. Sometimes it will be more enjoyable than others. But in the end, I think learning is always good. So that would be my third thing I would say for psychic basics, that it is an endless pursuit of knowledge. I think the next thing I would say, and as I say, I've been teaching a Psychic 101 class, but the things I'm saying today are not necessarily what's in that class. They're just things I think are appropriate to the subject. I think actually the next thing that I would say, um, which we talk about in the class, and I talk about frequently, is the importance of trusting spirit, however you define your higher power. I was taught when I first began reading professionally that whoever came to you for a reading was meant to come to you, even if it didn't seem to go well. They had still been sent to you for a reason, and you were the person to give them the message that they needed. And I found over the years that there were people who would come to me for readings um, who didn't really want to hear what was coming through that reading. And sometimes I was able to find a way to say it that they could accept. Sometimes I couldn't, but I always trusted that I had been sent the right person. Now, I also am going to say that it's also important to honor your own boundaries. So I believe that you should trust that you're going to get the readings that are meant for you, that you're going to do a good job with them, and you need to trust and to just bring through those messages that come to you. Whether you're doing it clairvoyantly or you're using something like tarot cards or palmistry, bring through what you get, trust what you get, um, and go with it. But there are times that you may not feel comfortable with what's happening, and I don't feel that you are. I feel that you should certainly make an effort, but I don't feel that you're bound to deal with a situation that is making you uncomfortable simply because you've chosen this path. And hello to Lisa in the chat room. It's good to see you. And Lisa brings us greetings from San Francisco. I can think of times where I had clients who I felt were asking for things that were inappropriate. And I would refuse to answer those questions. And I occasionally would give the person their money back and say, I simply cannot do this reading because I feel that you're trying to do something abusive. And I think that that's also something that you have a right to. My favorite story about that involves an old friend of mine, Christy Passion, who was in the news some time ago um, in a sensational um, trial because one of her clients came to her asking for advice on how to hire a hitman to kill her husband. Um, there are people who will do things that are not appropriate. And it is not incumbent upon you to deal with that. In the case of Christy, when she realized the woman was actually serious, at first she thought the woman was just venting. Um, when she realized the woman was actually serious, she went to the police, who encouraged her to continue doing this to get more information, which eventually came to the trial. But, there are also far less dramatic things that may not be appropriate, and you have the right to say, I'm just not comfortable with this subject matter, and in certain cases, it may be appropriate to go to some authority or another, depending on exactly what's been brought to you. Mercifully, I've never had that kind of situation myself. I've had people who wanted things I thought were inappropriate, but nothing like that. But you do not have to. You can set your boundaries and keep them at the same time that you trust that the people you need are coming to you. It may be that the person was sent to you for that reading to be told that what they're trying to do is not appropriate. Um, so these are all things to consider before you even really get into the psychic arts themselves. They're all parts of reading. Sometimes you will get readings that are uncomfortable but not inappropriate. One of the most common ones is the client who will not show you the slightest reaction while you're reading, which actually, with with time, I've come to realize can be very helpful because um, the less you know, the more accurate the information you're getting, in my opinion. But there are some people who are at great pains to try to be completely impassive, and that can be a little disconcerting at times, but not inappropriate. And what I've found is more often than not, when you come to the end of the reading, they'll tell you, "You did a great job." Um, but this is something you learn through practice. It's something that one of the reasons that I've always encouraged would-be psychic readers to work at least for a time in psychic fairs is that you meet so many other psychics who can tell you these things that you will encounter as you read for many people. Um, Other things that may be boundary issues. I was talking recently. I don't tend to enjoy reading in nightclubs, for example. I've done it, or at least after a certain hour, because there tends to be a certain amount of inebriation. For myself, I find that I will pick up that inebriation and physically feel bad. Therefore, I avoid that scenario. But I know other people who don't have that same effect, and they can read for inebriated people with no problem and not come away with any adverse effect. It's something I think you can only learn through experience how you're going to react to it. Um, and this is also where psychic hygiene is very important, because if you do find yourself picking up something physical from a client, you must clear that out, or you'll carry it forward. And hello to Steve in the chat room. It's good to see you, Steve. Um, I've known people who will pick up physical um, symptoms from people they've read for. And if they know good psychic hygiene, they'll also quickly get rid of them. But when you do a reading for a person, you're taking that normal psychic contact that we always have whenever we interact with people, and you're deepening it considerably. And the effect that you're going to receive from them will be much deeper. Um, Even if you're not doing a reading, if you're just going through life, you may also find yourself picking up this sort of thing from people. And again, this is where psychic hygiene is important. Um, I think we've all met people or been in places that caused us to feel unexpectedly good or unexpectedly bad because of the charge they were carrying. And psychic hygiene is how we clear ourselves of those charges. Um, and some people are so receptive, they will pick up all kinds of things from other people. And psychic hygiene is even more important for those people. What other psychic 101 things? Um, as I was saying before, when you do a reading, you should always trust what you get. You should always say what you get, and you must not analyze it as you receive it. Psychic reading is a passive exercise. The message comes through you. You can analyze it afterwards if you like, but if you try to do it while you're getting the message, you're going to screw it up. Either you'll stop it entirely or you'll warp it. Instead, while you're bringing the message through, um, it is important not to bring any judgment to it. And, if you get a message that seems highly unlikely, you can always say, this seems very unlikely to me, but it is what I'm getting, and all I can give you is what I'm getting. I think it's very important to also remember you can be wrong. You can be wrong because perhaps you have tried to analyze that message as it came through, um, or various other things, or maybe you just didn't have a good connection with that person. But sometimes you will be wrong. The best example I've ever seen of that, the most picturesque example I've ever seen of that was a psychic called Deandra. And she had been invited to, and hello to Ishika in the chat room. She had been invited to a family dinner that I'd also been invited to, and we both read for the hostess. And the hostess remarked to Deandra that Deandra had predicted she would be a grandmother, or she would be expecting a grandchild by this time, and it had not happened. And Deandra's response to this was, "Oh, well, I guess I was wrong." And I've always thought that was the best possible answer. It was an even better answer because the following week, the hostess found out she was going to be a grandmother. Um, and so it turned out the psychic was not wrong, but she was willing to admit to the possibility that she was. Now, Kazan says, before I started witch school, a witch asked to hug me. I said, oh, okay, and then we hugged. And I felt sick and my energy drained. Um, I decided to set up psychic shield and grounding, and I was much better. That's exactly what you should do. Um, and that's exactly what psychic hygiene is all about. Now, hello to Donna. I think I've already said hello to Donna, but I'll say hello again. And Donna says, I've been doing readings for customers for about 4 years now with 100% accuracy, but the internet says that 100% is not possible. And what do you think? Um, well, I'm certainly not going to question your experience. Um, but I would not normally look for 100% accuracy. Um, and I would be personally very hesitant to promise 100% accuracy. But you know your own experience, and I'm not going to question that. Um, I find I find for myself that I have been very accurate for people, and I've also found that sometimes it's more accurate for some than for others. I had one client I worked with for a very long time, and I could predict things for her not only to the day but to the hour, which is not something I could normally do. But my connection to that individual client was unusually strong. Um, but even then, I wouldn't have said it was 100%. But that doesn't mean that's impossible. And it doesn't mean that you may not be experiencing that. So if you are, more power to you. And Ishika asks, can we ask questions on here as well? Actually, we have a program called Tarot Thursday, where you can ask psychic questions and get psychic readings if you like. I might do a reading day one day. You can, but so if you're asking, can you get a reading here? Sometimes, but if you're asking, can you ask a general question? Absolutely. So please feel free. Um, and I think those were all of the. And Donna says that they use cards they created themselves and have published them. That's wonderful. And I think that when you create your own system that way, you probably are going to find that you interact with it extremely well. Um, and I know for myself, I started reading tarot with this deck, the hoi polloi deck, in, I want to say 1973, 1974. I was very young at that time. But I would not say that I became a great tarot reader, a good tarot reader, until I designed my own tarot deck. Because in designing it, I came to understand all of the cards far more deeply because I had to design them. And that, of course, was the Tarot of Hecate, um, which I was kind of pushed into creating by Lady Bitterwind, who felt my artwork would be ideal for a tarot. But it became a great adventure that ultimately led also to the Infinite Tarot deck, and a lot of creativity. But I found that creating my own cards or creating any system of divination, I think does give you a stronger tie to it. And with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. So I want to thank you for joining me. I love spending this time with you. I love talking with you. I hope you're having a lovely rest of your day. And thank you for joining me for Midday with Reverend Don. And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. And Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to continue to be with us as we go forward in life and help us to trust what we get from the universe and also to set our boundaries for what we want and what we don't want. Help us to design our lives in the best possible way as we go forward and to know the success that this can bring us. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and thanks. Knowing you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always. And I will see you hopefully tomorrow. And